So good morning, everybody. This is Gil, and I'm kind of representing and giving a shout out to Corey and Catalina as well in regards to the teamwork and putting together the next few slides. So one of the things we really wanted to try to do in a very pragmatic way is frame the spheres of influence that we're working on when we talk about supports for credit deficient pupils. First, we want to take a look at ed code and board policy. We want to understand the instructional environment and our staffing plan. Had a lot of good information coming from James this morning in regards to the dollars that are available and how it has to be heavily influenced by things that eat, that we say in regards to that, because we are a people industry. But then we want to talk a little bit about credit recovery strategies. So when we talk about education code, and we've got a couple examples on the next couple slides if you guys are moving ahead. And I know a lot of people are accessing the slides as we're speaking about them, but graduation requirements. And one of the things that districts are looking at with their governing boards and their collective bargaining teams is they're examining the graduation requirements and what's essential, where are we able to truncate, what are we taking a look at, what is necessary in regards to that. And so it's a fine balance between equity and access when we talk a little bit about that. School calendars, the expanded learning side of it, instructional minutes, there was some good talk about that from the business side, but there also has to be the application instructional side, and then the parameters for ADA collection. So the reason why we just throw the slide up there as we start looking at credit deficiency is really making sure we're doing our checks and balances, that we might have this great innovative idea from the instructional side. We just need to make sure that we overlay it and overlap it with our education code and our board policy. We know we can always add to ed code, but we just can never detract from ed code. Okay. And we don't want to identify a practice that is in violation of our board policy. We might need to create an MOU that might sunset, or we might be able to establish actually some change idea. Here's an example from TVUSD Credit Recovery Facilitator Policy. Just gives an example of how they rethought how they offered credit recovery. There used to be some restrictions regards to it, 2 classes per semester. There was some guidelines and some outlines, but when this pandemic hit, they sat down as a team and rethought that and made some adjustments. So they really worked from that change idea of how do we accelerate because of the need that was based on that. So just one example in regards to that. Here's another example of putting a new twist on an old idea, okay, in regards to that. When we talk about challenging courses, here is a leverage point that districts are examining. Here is from Paris Union High School District in regards to how can a kid challenge a class, okay? And what's interesting about this policy, and when we take a look at some of our other policies across our 23 school districts, mostly for our 19, secondary school districts in regards to that are dealing with credits and working with credits, is this ability to challenge a class. Can I take the final exam? Mary already talked about it this morning, that for every class at the secondary level in Marietta Valley, they have this final exam. Can I take that? To what degree do I need to demonstrate understanding? Can I issue credit in relationship to that? Also, we need to consider in regards to credit recovery. Oftentimes policies will allow a kid to take it and challenge a class that if they've never taken it, okay, I can challenge it, but how do I mark it as possibly as incomplete? And then once I can pass the final exam, I hate to say it, a month later, or maybe over the summer, that I can go back and change the grade and issue original credit for it. So what is the overlay in regards to challenging classes and rethinking some of our current tools in the new environment? Now let's shift a little bit to the instructional environment and staffing plan. This is a little bit complicated, obviously, but these are the things that we're examining and taking into consideration and where there's support available. We talk about summer school structure and offering. Again, we've already worked on that. A lot of our plans are set, or they're starting to solidify. Extended day and year. Again, just laying out the landscape. Master schedule, changes and manipulations. There's a lot of discussion around, do we go to a 4x4? Do we try to get 8 classes in versus 6, plus additional extended day, plus additional summer school? So there's a lot of tools and resources, but they have to be taken into consideration in the context of teacher availability and participation. Already people are looking at in regards to pay scales. How do we incentivize? How do we structure that? Do we pay summer school on an hourly and then we're fine and we have the resources and the human capital to do it? Or are our teachers struggling right now and it's hard to get them in? They're burned up, they're burned out. What does it take to do that? And so availability, matching the availability to the need is critical. We talked a little bit about contract and pay. Counselors, that's another idea that's out there, that counselors historically, as an old high school principal, counselors are not necessarily part of my summer school planning. It's kind of technical work, getting kids into certain classes, handing them over to the teachers, seeing if they pass it, and then recovering that credit and putting it into the student information system. But counselors might be part of the SCL. Counselors might be embedded into my summer school plan, they're part of what's going on, because we have to address the heart and soul of our kids as well as our staff. And so that's really critically important and a good strategy to investigate, and we have resources there for you. And again, we've talked a little bit about paraprofessionals already, but again, in the summer school model, oftentimes special education is truncated to extended year. It's not necessarily, RSP support there in regards to it. Let's rethink that. Okay, and what does that look like? EL support as well. Do we sit there and have EL support specifically to accelerate students through their EL coursework in English language arts so we can get them into grade level courses? Do we have specific supports in regards to running sheltered classes? And what does that look like? And how do we group our kids to be able to give them access? Access plus success equals completion. And then finally, we want to talk about acceleration strategies. Okay, credit recovery and acceleration. Again, a lot of overlap that we've talked about in the previous slides, but independent study. Some districts are expanding their independent study programs. Some are even taking them and expanding them down into maybe they're 9-12 right now, and they're going to go 6-12. Some people are even looking at, in regards to independent study, very difficult independent study below that because students are so dependent in regards to that. But what is the maturation level of students that can take on independent study, and how does that look in an expanded environment? Online courses, of course, we mentioned UC Scout, Personal Online, BYU, Apex. These are all things that we have access to, but there's a certain level of academic fitness that the kid has to internalize to be able to take this on. The last thing we want to do is have a kid struggling in a digital environment and give them more digital. That just doesn't make sense in regards to it. So what supports do we need with respect to that? Talked about summer school, extended day, scheduling 4x4, mentioned that a little bit. Dual enrollment is also an opportunity, but dual enrollment, it's a difficult environment. In regards to, you really have to work collaborative with your teachers that have their masters at those levels, those master degrees, and you have to work collaboratively with your community college and under which umbrella you're operating. Concurrent enrollment might be an easier strategy. Now I'm working with my student body and I'm engaging possibly online or possibly physically with the community colleges around me or even around the state. And so concurrent enrollment is something that we can't leave on the table. We need to consider that and understand that in regards to accelerating credits. We know in the dual enrollment and the concurrent enrollment environment, it's 2 for 1. What I mean by that, if you're issuing 5 credits for a semester class, in those 2 environments, you'd be issuing 10. So it's another way of, again, accelerating. Here, lastly, is some resources that we've kind of put together. Again, going back to Melissa's theme earlier, there's a lot of this information that we talked about in the fall. When we talk about, yes, we've got these great strategies that we're thinking about, but we really want to know the impact for our students when they leave us. Is it going to impact their college admission? Is it going to impact UC, CSU applications? What's the trickle down or trickle up effect of these decisions that we're making and these opportunities we're expanding? So just some good ideas here in regards to as far as those resources.